We are in the process of trying to recruit new police officers on a regular basis, as well as a new finance director. We're trying to bring a new city manager to town. And I think it's important that the town move forward with something, and I think that that's one of the reasons why I was a proponent for putting some town money into the kitty for moving things forward. I'm not so sure that we shouldn't put more in to get things moving forward so that we can do a really good job on getting investors to essentially step up to the plate. However, and by the way, I also point out this council voted long before I was on the council, continued vote unanimously for moving forward. It might be time. Oh, sorry. I'll go fast. I'll go faster. So my feeling is that we do need to make some improvements here in the town. I'll leave it to the experts. I'm not a building expert, so whether or not we can remodel or whatever. We do have $2 million in the building department fund. I think we should do something along those lines. However, the council continued to vote 5-0, as the vice mayor has pointed out. We need to move forward. We need to move forward. And I don't disagree with that. However, during my campaign, and still on my website, everybody likes to go out there and quote, and I haven't updated it as often as I need to, so I apologize for that. But people have continued to say, they wanted a new town center, and I have a statement out there on the new town center that I support a new town center, provided it's, as is said, built with private funds. And I still support a new town center, provided it, as it's said, developed with limited funds. My feeling, though, is that, as Councilmember McKeithen has said, a different council could come back and say, we're going to cut back on the street maintenance. We're going to reallocate money. Other councils have made shortcut decisions, and that's why this council has moved forward and put some of our money for our retirees into an irrevocable trust to keep future councils from making bad decisions or from making shortcut decisions. I think that what we need to do is I ran on no new taxes, and that's how I feel. I don't think that we need to have any opportunity for taxes to be spent other than for grant money or for the private funds, or at the building department, or additional building funds. I don't have an issue with that, but I do have an issue with the potential that there could be a parcel tax, there could be other taxes, or there could be reallocation of taxes made by this or future councils without public input. So that's my comment. Any other comments before we take public? Yep, Jerry?
So what I'm hearing is that we want to make sure that never, ever would any residents' tax dollars be used for this kind of construction. Is that really what we're saying?
No, if there were another vote, they could do it.
They could,
Or primarily.
No, you're not listening.
It does not say that. It says primarily, so you could actually have a substantial chunk of
Listen to what I said. I said that no taxpayer money, resident taxpayer money, would go into the project.
That may not be true.
Well, why not?
That's what I hear.
I'm gonna.
Show me where in the wording where that's not true.
Says that using funds derived primarily from private donations. So, for example, if this was a $10 million structure and $6 million came from private donations and $4 million could still come from general fund taxpayers' money, the way this is written, it does not preclude using some portion. In fact, it was written this way primarily because We wanted to be able to capture the building funds that were set aside somewhat for this purpose.
But those aren't taxes. Those
That's
are,
true.
those
Yeah,
are
that is
fees.
not
Those are fees.
Those are
It's a
fees.
big difference.
Yeah.
I said it was primarily to capture that money, but we also wanted, as I said earlier, retaining maximum flexibility for this council and future councils. I drafted it so that if, the council has turned around the financial picture of the town drastically in the last year or so. Suppose that continues into the future. 2, 5, 8, 10 years from now, there may actually be enough money to fund a portion of this project. Now, you can take that out and make it so that no public funds could be used. I left it in there because I don't have a crystal
What
ball.
I'm talking about is the discussion that's taken place. And the discussion that's taken place, the bottom line is, what I heard anyways, is people want to make sure that general fund monies, any money paid by taxpayers that goes in the general fund or any parcel taxes, any taxpayer money is not used for this project. Now, I also heard that we want to make sure that this is going to be binding forever. I believe that was the intent of some of the comments that were made, but you're saying that because of the wording that you have here, that wouldn't be so.
No, it would be binding or non-binding, depending on how the council wants to submit this. And it certainly would not, as it's written today, you're absolutely correct, Jerry, would not use general fund or parcel tax money, but that doesn't rule out other money that could actually come to the city, could be put into a special fund, for instance.
Yeah, well, my focus was on taxes. The taxes the residents pay would not go into the project.
But also what I hear you saying is that you are going to preclude any future council from going out to the residents potentially with a new tax and letting them vote on that. Is that what I'm hearing also? I mean, not, because I gotta tell you, it will, if you just allow the process to continue, the money will be raised. I am confident about that. If you had been in the town center, if you talked to the resident committees who are doing the fundraising efforts, the money is very real, and we won't have to go forward. I think what I hear Councilmember McKeithen saying is that, what if you get up, it's a $10 million project, what if you get up to $9 million in private donations and you're still needing $1 million, and you've got to put the roof on, right? So where's that gonna come from, right? So you're telling me that we wouldn't be able to somehow go to the residents and say, you know, we need another $1 million in taxes, or?
No, that is, no, let me clarify. Interestingly enough, this city council cannot bind future city councils yourselves to that. You cannot tie their hands and say, in the future, you can't spend money on a project. However, the voters have powers beyond yours. The voters can say, we restrict the use of our taxpayers' funds, which is kind of why we go out with the parcel tax. It's restricted to certain uses, and the voters get to say, don't use it for anything else. Similarly, and I think, Elizabeth, you hit the nail on the head in the sense that if money were needed, you can always go out and ask the public to authorize or grant you a tax. What this says is, for now, until it's changed by the voters, these are the limitations that that the voters could put on themselves.
And if we ended up, let's say if we did some sort of thing with the charter city, we could enact, excuse me, we could enact a fee, such as, I think another council member has mentioned, a real estate fee. Or it could be some sort of impact fee, that those fees could be used. Because they're fees as opposed to taxes. Is that not correct?
Yes, and you could, but usually those real estate, quote, fees are taxes. And after Prop 26, everything is a tax unless it falls into a certain exception. They're deemed to be taxes. Even what we used to call fees are considered taxes now after Prop 26. But the point being, the voters moving forward could repeal parts or all of this. The voters could allow a new tax. And if you were a charter city, you could allow a new tax that is, quote, or even as a general law, so you could add a new tax that is a special tax, meaning for one purpose only. It doesn't go into the general fund, it goes into another specific fund. So, I mean, there are ways, again, staff doesn't have a dog in the hunt. What we want to make sure is that we give you as much flexibility as possible for discussion purposes, and in the end, you can get as specific and as limiting as you see as appropriate.
Well, I wish we hadn't injected the charter city element into this discussion, because I think that just further complicates this measure. Because we're going to read that in the headlines in the paper, that the council is thinking about that that's one of the reasons that. So anyway, I think there is such vagueness associated with this project at this point in time, in terms of a lot of work still that has to be done. And what if because of all these complexities, all these things that may arise during the campaign, cast a lot of uncertainties among voters' minds about the town project, they turn it down. What's our recourse then in terms of fixing the problem we have with town facilities?
The way I read it, it says that should we construct a new town center using private funds? If the answer comes back, no, don't do that, then that says all bets are off and we can put parcel tax or whatever to pass it.
Really? Is that
That's
what
how-
you
I
want?
could read it, I could read it. I'm just
Why would
saying.
you do that? You know?
That's how it's worded.
I know, but.
That's how it's worded. I'm just trying to be somebody who's reading it objective.
I really.
By the way, I said that to you too. You forgot to mention it.
Well, you cut me off at the throat. I couldn't, say what everything you said. No, but the thing is that I think we're all in accord that we want to provide reasonable facilities for our employees, and that what we are providing now is not reasonable facilities. And I'm going to respond to Councilmember Dobby's statements about the Taj Mahal, about the plans and the grandiose stuff and everything, because I think he is a little out of date with what has been going on with the town center. And the minutes that, and Councilmember McKeithen was there, Mayor Widmer was there, they can
I wasn't there for the whole meeting.
well, but you were there for the most of
That's
it.
okay.
When
I was there for
when-
most of it.
Right, so when the architect said, we've reduced the size by over 20%, almost 25%, and the overall cost is less than 10 million. We've reduced, it was never the objective to create a Taj Mahal or grandiose city hall environment. It's always been thought more of as a public safety venue with an adjunct city administration portion. So he goes on to say that he got 2 cost estimates for the revised sizing of the project, and it's under $10 million. One of our task force members, I'm defending the task force work because the process has not been allowed to continue. Rose Ha asked the architect about the style, the configuration, the design of the project that we're looking at. He was his conceptual, free, pro bono design for the design competition. And he says, we're not married to that. That when we go out to public outreach and to public charrettes and everything, that can be made into whatever the residents want. So flexibility in changing the design and going forward like that. The chief of police was there, and he said that a year ago he did a review of the facilities and identified inadequacies, and he knows that they are losing good police officers who are making lateral moves, agreeing to come and work at Atherton, but when they come and walk through the police facility, they go, I can't work here. It's just in such a sad state of repair. I think our goal is to do this, to pull together and have the community feel good about where their employees work. That's my goal. I don't have any ego in the project at all, and if other council members think that I do, I'll resign from that committee, and, let them go forward with it. It really needs to go forward. It doesn't need to be put on the ballot. It's just too confusing. So I'd like to call for a motion.
Well,
We have to hear from the
had
public.
comments. yeah.
Before public comments, you did mention that I was there for the whole meeting, and I will make two comments. One, the slightly below $10 million does not include I think it was almost $2 million for the design phase. And I did not hear the police chief say publicly, at least, that we were losing any police officers because of the present structures, which I am not saying that they do not need to be.
I apologize. He told me that after the meeting,
That is
and
not
so,
something he stated publicly at
Right.
the meeting at all.
you're absolutely correct. But he said that there's a real need for new police facilities. And he challenged the committee to do it right.
Any other comments before we take public comment? All right, we'll open the floor to public comments.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Again, Farzad Najat, Paxton Road resident. Actually, since you guys mentioned the town buildings, and actually share a story with you that I'm a home builder and I actually built a home on Selby Lane. And the first time I went to you guys, the building department there, I was just shocked. I was like, well, yeah, I figured that within a few months, they'd certainly be in a better location. And now it just reminded me, I haven't been there lately, but 3 years, 4 years that they're still in that location. And I don't know who would say that you guys don't deserve, this, we shouldn't rebuild. So one is, I mean, where has everyone been? That's one question. It's like the 3 years have gone by. Two, again, I see you guys pushing a lot to the voters. And I look, and I don't know how many fellow residents are here, but I see a lot of empty chairs. People in Atherton, residents, I don't know how involved they are. We sort of want to trust you guys to make the hard decisions. And I see sort of political gamesmanship going on where I think you guys want to just push everything to the voters. On one hand, I hear that it's good to get a good sense of what the voters feel. On the other hand, you guys are making everything binding. It's not, so if it were advisory, you could say, hey, okay, you guys want to get a good sense, and you'll add that to your pool of decision making. But on one hand, you're leading the discussion by saying, hey, yeah, you want to get a sense of what the voters are feeling like. On the other hand, I don't see I'm not really confident that when something goes to the ballot, that's necessarily the best thing. I think that's a way for you guys to sort of push. I mean, we select you guys to represent, the council and make these hard decisions. And I think you guys are sort of sending stuff back to us now and saying, well, it's going in the ballot. We want to get a sense for how the residents feel. And I don't believe that's the best way of doing it. I would personally, I'm disappointed in the Little League decision, but that's a minor thing. I don't know how often building comes up in Atherton, not very much for the government, but when it does, I'm not really getting confidence in you guys. I'm feeling like you guys want to push everything back to us, and then the gentleman that was here for the Little League earlier, for example, they're special interests, and they're not here for the whole town. They're not here for the welfare of the whole town. They're here for their cause, and you see they're gone. But I'm here, I'm a resident, and I don't even play Little League, but neither do my children, but I sat there and listened to it and put in my 2 cents. And I feel that you guys are putting a lot into the voters where what you think, the decision you think you're gonna get there, you're really not gonna get it. I think it's a cop-out. I would like to see you guys make the tough decisions here at this forum and have it pass the litmus test with the residents. And that's all finished. Thank you.
Other public comments?
You know, in listening to your discussions about this particular ballot measure, I think it's very confusing. I'm still perplexed on why we're going forward with this ballot measure. I look at the other two ballot measures, I get it. You know, not as much as the Little League, but I get the library. People don't want to put more things in the park. It's a question of, do you want things in the park or not? This is a replacement issue. We've got the site selected. The structures need replacement. Everybody says they're in agreement on that, on council. We have the money, and I've been to these meetings as well, where we're pretty confident about the money. We wouldn't be going forward. I just don't get this. I don't get this. What are we voting for? And what if it's turned down? What does that mean? You know, to me, it would mean that the people just didn't read it or didn't quite get it. But I just don't understand where this is going with this. And I think most of the people on the town task force, which I need to admit that I'm on there too, we just don't get what's going on here. And everything that's been discussed so far, there's still not clarity on why this is going forward as a ballot measure. So I would recommend that you just abandon this and let the task force do its deed and get the new structures into this town that's much needed by everybody. Thank you.
Next, public comment? Ann's gonna speak, and then John, you can go next.
Ann McNerney, Watkins Avenue. When people don't understand a ballot measure, they won't know. You could read this ballot measure and say using only public funds, and somebody who isn't very informed about the process is going to say, even though it says primarily public funds, they're going to say, hey, I don't want to cut myself out of any grant monies or something down the road. Now, whatever is done by this council, of course you could get 750 signatures and put something else on the ballot saying we do want a new town center if this happens to say, if people happen to say no. But I think there's enough confusion about the discussion and about this topic that there's a chance that people are going to vote it down. No, and then what are you going to do? So I really don't think this should be on the ballot. And I do think there was a little bit of a political motivation because it was sort of, the more ballot measures there are, the more likely people are sort of wanting to vote no on everything. And I think we have the first issue on the ballot, the library, because people think the town council made a bad decision and over 250 people signed a petition that we need a ballot, and then their cause isn't being heard in time. But on the Little League, which is an overserved special interest group in town, they're getting something on the ballot which hasn't gone through the process. And now we're circumventing, the Widmer and Keithan say they don't want to circumvent the process, but putting it on the ballot is exactly what's happening because there's been a task force and it's been in process for a year. And I'm not disagreeing that the police department and the Historical Society and the town council, that we need a new town center, but I think you're really risking getting a no vote and it should be taken off. And I do think that there is a political motivation for throwing these extra ballots on, and I'll be very sad if investing another evening where I'm losing money because I'm here rather than working, I am going to see the normal 3-2 breakdown. I really think, and I hope the voters will vote for people who are going to represent them better. The reason we're talking about this ballot is because we don't feel represented or listened to.
Next, John?
John Ruggiero, Stockbridge Avenue. I feel like Claude Rains talking to Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca, and when he said he was shocked. And I'm shocked that so few Atherton residents here, because I've talked to many, many residents that are big on this issue of putting, already have the library on the ballot. People are pro and con on that. Now we have the town center to be on there, another pro and con issue, and on your agenda tonight, that's supposed to be it. It goes back for years. Mr. Gibbity, the publisher of the Almanac, and her boss, wrote a great viewpoint on this not long ago that I've saved, and it just shows you what the people think of us. It said, the current plan by the Atherton City Council member Charles Marsala to take millions of dollars from the town dedicated library fund should be scrapped before any more time is wasted. We can understand Marsala and his colleagues on the Blue Ribbon Task Force for a new center are desperately looking for ways to finance a new town hall to replace the inadequate building we have. And in that phase, as Mrs. Lewis said, officers don't want to come to work in Atherton. But the chief told me the complete opposite. He went through 31 applicants, good applicants, to get Officer Barron, which he just hired the other day. So there were over 31 applicants to come to Atherton. So people want to come here. But anyway, that's just an aside on that. But it also goes in his article about Joan Saunders, who was on the Blue Ribbon Task Force, and she got off because she was embarrassed the way it was run. She stated, Mr. Marsala tried to sell the library building. We do not want, trying to sell them the library building, do not want. Bottom line is, Gibbity and the paper finally say, if Marsala and the group sincerely want to bring a new town project to Atherton, he should persuade the council members to put the issue before the voters. And that's what I thought we were doing. I've called Marsala on this recently. I have his 2 phone numbers. Both of them are non-existent anymore. I wanted to get his thoughts on this. He seems to be one of the main leaders on this, not officially now on the committee. But anyway, thank you.
Any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, then we'll bring it back to the council.
So, I really am imploring my fellow council members to do the right thing and take this proposal off the table and let the town center task force, the private residents who are not on the town center task force, do their job and raise the necessary money. The last discussion was to go out and get $200,000 to help pay for architects' fees, marketing fees, to go out to the public with the initial planning and marketing to then start the design process. Not the town center task force design process, but the design process with the architect under the guidance of the town staff, their needs that they need, the size they need, and then the residents for the look and feel of the building. So I'd like to make a motion that we do not go forward with a ballot measure having to do with the town center task force or new town center, project.
I'll second that motion, and I'd like to add some discussion when it's appropriate.
I think what we're forgetting is there have been other efforts to raise private donations prior to this. There was a fundraising arm of the first, I guess it was the Blue Ribbon Task Force, and as I remember, nothing came of that.
But that was then and this is now.
Well,
you can't compare it. That was then and this is now. Let's go forward.
Well, I'm saying there have been previous efforts, and...
Just because you feel...
Excuse me, Elizabeth, may I finish speaking?
Of course, yes.
Thank you. So there have been prior efforts that did not succeed, because I think there was a statement made that, we can easily raise the money. There have been efforts and they did not succeed. Also, with due regard to the resident who said we're pressing this on the voters, I wish we didn't have to press these issues on the voters. It does seem like a cop-out. We try very hard to make the argument that these sorts of decisions should be made at the council level. I can't tell you how many times and how many months, probably for the last year, we have made exactly the argument in great detail that you have stated, that as a democratic form of government, that's exactly what we should be doing. And I won't go into the ad nauseum kind of arguments. I'd be happy to email them to you, and if you have enough memory in your computer. But it did not succeed. That is not what the public wanted, and this room was filled with people saying that is not what they wanted out the door. So that's why we're in this situation today, unfortunately. But I do believe the right thing is to do exactly what we are presently on track doing. And I think that there are a lot of people, as John has said, that I have heard from who do want this on the ballot. And I think we should go forward with it.
We have ready for discussion.
Yeah, keep going. Well, one of the things, I was on the Blue Ribbon Task Force, as I said before. Mr. Marsala, and I would say this to his face if he was here, continuously tried to find ways on the Blue Ribbon Task Force to funnel the library funds into a new town center.
You know, that was then, and
Can I
it's-
finish, please,
No,
Elizabeth?
you cannot bring that up, because
Why
he's
not?
not on council anymore. That's not where we are today.
No.
That's just, confusing
Well,
the issue.
I'm not confusing the issue, I'm just stating some facts about the Blue Ribbon Task Force, whose job was to find a way to build a new town center. Now, the Blue Ribbon Task Force finally told Mr. Marsala, do not bring this subject up again, because according to the rules, there is no way that that money can be used to build a new town center. But what I'm saying is, at least one of the things this would do would also prevent any of that library money being used to build a new town center. So if nothing else, that would be one purpose of this.
Okay.
I thought you were getting ready to go.
The vote certainly wouldn't answer the question that's been raised about whether there's an appetite out there to provide funds for building a new town center. So regardless of how the vote might come out, if it came out in favor, we would still be faced with that question. I think this idea of using library funds for the town center, yeah, that was something that was, I think, floated at one point in time, but I think that it got answered a long time ago about it doesn't meet the test of those tax monies being raised for library purposes and can only be used on library services. So, I just don't see that as from a real issue standpoint, a real issue, even though it got a lot of discussion and a lot of heat, and I think that there is a process underway. There is no town center plan as of today as to what might be constructed or what might take the place of the present buildings. I think there's a real problem, will be a real problem in voters' minds as to what they're really voting for or voting against on this thing, because of already we can see things like Charter City and other elements being thrown into the mix here, and it's just going to complicate the thing, I think, way beyond where it has to. Whereas if we knew that we had committed funds, and yeah, somebody might back out at some point in time, but if you need $10 million in committed funds, hopefully you'll get 12 or 14 million committed, and so that the fallout would still be, there'd still be enough left to cover that project. I think the real risk here is by going ahead it's gonna make the town center as controversial as the library project, without giving the project a chance to even be defined, and the community a chance to see if real donor funds are even a real prospect.
I'd just like to make one point, Jerry, that I think you're not being quite as transparent as you might be. When you make this statement, and you have made it in letters to Anne Marie Despain, and you have made it at this council meeting, and you question this town's potential withdrawal from the Joint Powers Association, you clearly are raising the specter of using library funds for other purposes, which clearly could include the possibility of using those library funds potentially for something like a town center.
That is absolutely untrue. It doesn't fit the definition of library services. I have never, ever given that implication in anything that I have said or written in the past. I have said that instead of putting money into bricks and mortar, that there be consideration be given to other kinds of library services, like our school libraries. That's been the extent of my discussion or my suggestions in the past.
I just want to make a comment, and unfortunately, our resident who spoke impassionately about and challenging the council to make the hard decisions up here, and then Councilmember McKeithen saying that she's tried to do that over and over, and I know that she has tried, saying that, you know, we were elected to make these decisions for you, and we're gonna make the decision about the library position, and so